Hi, my name is Tawny. I am one of the youth leaders at HighLife. So I watch podcasts. I'm a podcast lover. So I was watching or listening to one of the Porch podcasts about the story of Esther. While I was listening to the podcast, one thing that caught my eye is that in the book of Esther, God's name is never mentioned, and that God's hand is clearly at work here because Esther and her uncle Mordecai both had Jewish descent, and they were both living in this Persian kingdom where they both didn't know that these two people were Jewish. And I think the third thing that I really took away from it was that when Esther was ready to plead for her people with the king, that Esther had so much courage, and that she was ultimately ready, and she knew this was the right thing to stand up for her people. So looking back at my life, yes, there was a time where I really felt like God wasn't there, and it was when my brother went to the hospital for some unknown reason. He got put into a coma, and I remember I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I was really young, and I think I was around 10 to 12 years old. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, why isn't God here? Why isn't God here? Why isn't he helping my brother? Even though I knew my brother was not a good person, I really still felt like an attack emotionally because he was my brother. I really didn't feel God's presence because I think I kind of was like, okay, if I can't see God at work here, I can't see God, that means he isn't here. It means he doesn't care for me. It means he's not here for me. I remember one day I was crying outside the hospital, and I just remember looking up into the stars, and that was one of the most beautiful constellations I've ever seen, and I just cried and cried and cried, and I asked God for his help. And I remember the next day, that day my parents had to talk to me, and they were saying that my brother was gonna ultimately die and pass away, and I'm not sure exactly how this worked out, but the next morning I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna see my brother this morning. And I went into the room, and he's just sitting there, standing up. And I think ultimately right there, my vision is so straightforward, and I thought that God wasn't there for me. I thought that God wasn't here for me, and God was at work that entire time. So I know it may seem like God is invisible right now. I wanted to encourage you guys that God's hand is clearly at work.